Wednesday, Shiur, Tafshin Ein Gimel. We're in Sefer HaMamorim, Tafshin Teres Menachem, Sefer HaMamorim, Tafshin Yud Aleph, Tafshin Yud Beis, in the Maimer of Shabbos, Parshas Pinchas, Mevorcha Machedesh Menachem Ov, Tafshin Yud Aleph. We just started Ois Beis, chapter 2, and we are on the top of page Kuf Yutes. We're learning over here about the idea of karbonos, and whether, as it would seem, karbonos is the central idea of Avodas Hashem, and how that goes along with other statements that are made that seem to imply that there is an emphasis on other things aside from karbonos, like, for example, listening to Hashem, acts of kindness, and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, it seems that karbonos is the central theme of serving Hashem, and of course we aspire to serve Hashem, to bring karbonos when Mashiach comes, as the state of shleimus. And the Rebbe went into a discussion into the internal spiritual dimension of the bringing of the korban, which seems to be far more emphasized than Avodas HaTfilah in davening, which is in place of karbonos rather than the korban itself. So in order to understand all of these things, the Rebbe said we first have to preface the concept of the purpose of creation being the fact that God desired to have a dwelling place for himself in this lowly realm of ours. A dwelling place, dira, is, the Rebbe says, much like a human being who lives in his home with his entire being and his entire essence. That's where he really is truly himself. So too, what Hashem desired to have in this world is a place where he could be there with his whole being and with his whole essence. Chassidus explains that there are, in terms of God's manifestations, revelations, or Hashem making himself known and present, there is what's known as giluyim and etzem. Giluyim means revelations, and etzem means the essence. Giluyim are specific manifestations of Hashem, which are often one or two or three, but at least a limited revelation, limited to certain aspects. For example, infinite kindness or infinite mercy, so on and so forth. Miracles are revelations, but they are not representative of what Hashem really truly is, because Hashem is really and truly, his essence, his being is way, way beyond that. So these revelations, these giluyim, although very great, and although godly, and although infinite, are revelations. They're not the very essence of Hashem. Whereas Hashem making himself known in his true essence is of a different order completely. And it is the latter that Hashem desires to be present in our physical world. So that's where we're up to. On the top of page Kuf Yutes. The first line. So too is the idea of creating a dwelling place for Hashem down here in this low realm. That the very essence of God's infinite light, of God's infinity, should be down here. This is also the meaning of that which our sages say concerning Basi Legani. We learned, if you remember, in the first Maimer of this year, which is basically a Maimer based on the previous Rebbe's Maimer Basi Legani, the Maimer that the previous Rebbe gave out shortly the day before his passing in Tafshin Yud in 1950, based on this Pasuk Basi Legani, on this verse from Shiur, the Song of Songs, Basi Legani, Hashem says, I've come to my garden. And the Medrash says, Basi Legani, it doesn't say Legan, I came to the garden, it says I came to my garden. It means to say to my special garden. And the previous Rebbe and the Rebbe subsequently interpreted this as meaning the Iker Shechina B'tachtonim Hoysa, or actually the Medrash says it, and it's elaborated upon and expounded upon by the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe, that it means to say, what does it mean, my garden? It means that my main Shechina was in the lower realms. If you remember, we learned in the Maimer that when Hashem first created the world, He put Adam and Chava into Gan Eden, La'avdo L'Shamra, to work Gan Eden and to guard the Gan Eden. And then, and Hashem's Shechina was present there, in Gan Eden. And then through the sin of the Eitz Hadas, of eating from the tree of knowledge, man pushed away the Shechina from Gan Eden to the first heaven, and there were 7 in total transgressions that pushed away the Shechina all the way up, and then 7 tzaddikim came and brought it back down. So the initial state was, Shechina was down here. And which aspect of the Shechina? Iker Shechina, the main aspect of the Shechina. What does Shechina mean? Shechina, if you remember, is a reference to a level of godliness that dwells. Shechina is from an expression of Sheichen, dwelling, being present, right? And what was present? Iker Shechina. What's Iker Shechina? The main aspect of the Shechina. Ultimately, it means the very essence of Hashem, right? So, this is what the Rebbe says. Shahadiyuk bazeh. What's the choice of expression here? Is Iker Shechina. It doesn't say Shechina betachtonim hoysa, that the Shechina was down here. Iker Shechina betachtonim hoysa. The main dimension of the Shechina was down here. The main aspect of the Shechina was down here. What does it mean? Hainu lo yirak Shechina stam. We're not referring just to Shechina in general or simply B'chinas HaGeluim revelations, as I just explained. No, that's not what we're referring to. Ki im atzmus ein sof baruch hu. We're actually talking about the very essence of Hashem. Shal zeh ne'emar, concerning which it says, she'ikir shechina betachtonim hoysa. When we say the term ikir shechina, the main aspect of the shechina, we're actually talking about what? Ultimately, we're talking about the very essence of Hashem. In other words, shezeu inyan shenis'av HaKadosh Baruch Hu li'is lo yizbarach dira betachtonim, which is the idea of Hashem having a desire to have a dwelling place for Himself down here in this world. What does that mean? It means that Hashem had a desire that His very essence should be present down in this physical world, in this realm, our lowly realm. And how is this accomplished? This is accomplished, this is brought about through man's service, specifically down here in this physical world. Through man serving Hashem as prescribed in the Torah, by fulfilling his mission in this physical world, that brings about the very essence of Hashem into this world, which basically means we make a dira, a dwelling place for Hashem in this lowly world. This is what we do. Just like when we talk about the idea of Iker Shechina, the main aspect of the Shechina, B'tachtonim hoysa, which was down here, when, in the beginning, when Hashem created Adam and Chava and He put them into Gan Eden, right? Into the Garden of Eden. So what was present there? The Iker Shechina. And what happened as a result of the Chet Tzadas, the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge, and the subsequent transgressions? They pushed away the Iker Shechina from Gan Eden. And in turn, our Avodah, plan B as it were, from then on, is to bring back the very essence of Hashem down into this physical world. So, just like when we, in the beginning, before the sin of the Eitz Hadas, of the tree of knowledge, Iker Shechina, the main aspect of the Shechina was where? B'tachtonim, in this lowly realm, Shegam, Oz Haya Inin Avodah. And also then there was what? Serving Hashem. There was the need to serve Hashem. Why? Because as it says in the Pasuk, this is what the Pasuk says. That Hashem has placed Adam and Chava where? Has placed man into the Garden of Eden. La'avda, to work it, and to keep it, and to guard it. Which means, in other words, what? As Chazal say, La'avda means to do the mitzvahs asay, U'Lashamra means to do the mitzvahs leisasa, to keep the mitzvahs leisasa. La'avda means to serve Hashem through actions, through activity, through being active, which is basically the idea of mitzvahs. I say the active mitzvahs. L'shamra, to guard it, to keep it, to keep undesirable things out, is the idea of what? Serving Hashem through mitzvahs. The mitzvahs that we have to refrain, the actions that we need to refrain from doing. So just like initially, the Shechina was present in Gan Eden, before the sin of the Eitz Hadas, and Hashem gave Adam and Chava, gave man what? A job, a task to do, through which to keep, as it were, the Shechina in Gan Eden. So too, subsequently, after the Shechina was pushed away from Gan Eden through the sins, and what do? We carry out our mission for which we've been put into this earth. That is also the Avodah through which, the service of Hashem, through which what? We bring down the Shechina back down into this world. And now the Rebbe goes and elaborates further. What is the idea? To elaborate on this idea, the Hinik Siv, it says in the Pasuk, when God created the world, on the 6th day of creation, we say it in Kiddush every Friday night, God finished the job of creating the earth and all its hosts, right, etc., etc. And we talk about Shabbos, that Hashem rested on the 7th day. Because on the 7th day He rested from all His work, Asher bara Elokim, which God created, la'asos, to do. What does it mean He created to do? What's la'asos? It says in the Pasuk, Asher bara Elokim la'asos, that which God created to do. It seemed to imply that there's something that needs to be done after Hashem finished the job of creation. There's still something to do. And indeed, that's what our sages say. That's how Chazal interpret it. In the Medrash, Amr and Chazal, our sages teach in the Medrash, la'asais, what is the meaning of the word to do? L'saken, to fix, to complete, to fix. Which means to say that God has left something in creation unfinished, and it's man's job to finish that. V'hainu, shebechol davar yesh beis inyanim. It means to say that in everything in creation, there are two components. There are two aspects. Mashehu mitzad atzmai, that exists, that which is there by virtue of its own right, in its own right, meaning to say, it's there because Hashem created it. But then there is the element which is added through what? Through Avedis Adam, through man's serving Hashem. So too, it is also even concerning Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Now over here when we're talking about Gan Eden. You know, there's the story of Gan Eden as it is in Chumash Bereshis, in the story of creation, where Hashem placed Adam and Chava, when He created the world. And then there is Gan Eden as we know it, which is brought in Yecheskel and in other places, the Gan Eden which is the reward for Neshamas after we pass on. Or also where the Neshama goes at night. The Neshama goes back up to Gan Eden, at least to a certain level, if we do things right, to draw new energy for the coming day. Avron has a different interpretation of Gan Eden. Avron says Gan Eden is Cape Town. But anyway, according to the well, put it this way: there's the terrestrial Gan Eden, and then there's the celestial Gan Eden. The terrestrial Gan Eden is a physical place, as the Mittel Rebbe says in his Maimer. It's 32 degrees from Yerushalayim. Whether it's due, what is it, due west, northwest, whatever it is. But there is a physical, geographical location to which the Torah refers when it talks about what? About Adam and Chava being placed in Gan Eden, where the four rivers came out, where we know the Euphrates River exists, and the Tigris and so on and so forth, right? That's someplace in Iraq, in that part of the world, right? So that's the geographical, physical Gan Eden. So the Rebbe says like this. Now, what's the story of Gan Eden? If you look in the Ramban, Nachmanides in Bereshis, when the Torah describes this idea of Gan Eden, he says that there is the Gan Eden, the physical Gan Eden, but then there is the Gan Eden, the physical Gan Eden, what is behind the physical Gan Eden, what the physical Gan Eden represents. Which is, of course, the Gan Eden as we know it now, the place where the neshamas go after the person concludes his mission in life to draw from the Shekhinah, to get his reward, and so on and so forth. Right? Now these two are linked. Call it a moshel and a nimshel, if you will, or the physical Gan Eden and the spiritual Gan Eden, the terrestrial Gan Eden and the celestial Gan Eden. And they're parallels, right? So going back to this idea of what? That a person, what is it saying here? That there is, in everything, there is the way it is, so by virtue of how Hashem created it. And then there is that element which the person adds into it through serving Hashem. So too it is in Gan Eden. That in Gan Eden also, we have these two components. There is the Gan Eden as it is on its own, and there is the Gan Eden as what is added to the Gan Eden through the person serving Hashem. So so too is concerning Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, which is beyond the physical world. The karko is Hagan Eden hiaruchnis shebegashmi sheba'ilam. The floor of the Gan Eden is the spirituality of the physicality of this world. It's the spiritual dimension behind the physicality of this world. Right? We do a physical act over here in this physical world, and something spiritual transpires in Gan Eden, as a result of which the neshama later on, the soul later on, has the benefit of the godly revelations that come as a result of those physical actions. But where is that revelation, and where does the neshama actually experience that fully? In Gan Eden, right? So you have the physical Gan Eden, but then you have, as it were, the spiritual Gan Eden. You have the physical world, but then you have what happens in Gan Eden as a result of what we do in this physical world. So in this Gan Eden that we talk about, the spirituality of the physicality of this world, if you will, an inverse shadow, the spiritual shadow of this world, which is the Gan Eden, right? You know, there were certain tzaddikim that were able to tell. The Zohar says that the Yenukia met the two Tanoim, two sages, and he says, I detect from the scent of your garments that you didn't say Kriya Shema today. Or it says, for example, when Yaakov entered to Yitzchak, he felt the reich of Gan Eden, the scent of Gan Eden coming in with him. Why? Because if you're at higher, everything plays itself out on two tracks, as it were, the physical track and the spiritual track. If you're attuned to the spiritual track, you could see from there what's going on, what the person did do or didn't do, and so on and so forth, because all of this leaves an impression, leaves an impression or a consequence in the spiritual dimension, in Gan Eden. So in this Gan Eden, there is, as it is on its own, then there is what a person adds in Gan Eden through serving Hashem. And the Rebbe begins to explain this. The Hine. Gan Eden hu naila yesur ma'olam. Gan Eden is higher than the world. Why? Not only because this is physical and this is spiritual, but he explains it in the ruchnius, in the spiritual dimension of it, how Gan Eden is higher than the world. World, as we know it, is connected to what? To midos, to the emotional faculty, the emotional attributes of godliness. Right? As it says in the pasuk, Hashem said, I'm building the world with chesed, with the midos. As we say, we learned also in the previous Maimer, that the 6 days of creation are actually what? The 6 midos. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And each day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, was a different midah, a different divine attribute of the emotional faculties, as it were, right? Of spheres, the midas. Gan Eden klalusei hu elam abriya, shemeir bechabad chachmoseh b'naseh v'daitei te'ein sof shu inyan amechin. Gan Eden generally is connected to elam abriya. In the order of the four worlds, Atzilus, Briya, Yitzira, Asiya, right? So we are in Asiya, in the lowest realm, the world of action. The world of creation, which is Briya, right? That is generally the place of Gan Eden. Of course, Gan Eden Elyon, Gan Eden Tachton is Yitzira. The upper Gan Eden is Briya. And what is present in Briya? The intellectual attributes of the spheres.
Shouldn't it be Yitzira? How's it jumping up two worlds?
Why is he discussing of it? Because he's talking about the.
But if you decide that it's the next step allowed.
That's Gan Eden Atachmi. Gan Eden Elyon is Bria. It's generally connected to the idea of Bria. We don't have the time now to go through it, but it's we'll carry on tomorrow. But basically, just to get to the point is basically that Gan Eden is related to Moichin, to the intellectual attributes of godliness. World, as we know, the physical world is connected to the emotional attributes of godliness. And intellect and emotions are inherently different. And in order for one to exist, in order for the emotional attributes to come into existence, the intellectual attributes have to conceal themselves. They have to be taken away in order for the midas to come into being. That's the idea that I was going to get into over here. So this is the point. The point is Gan Eden is higher than the world, inherently higher than the world, because it's connected to the intellectual aspects of the spheres of the divine attributes and energies, whereas our world is connected to what? To the emotional aspects of the godly energy, and the two of them are inherently different. I'll elaborate a bit more on this idea of Gan Eden and spheres and so on and so forth tomorrow.